So on to match one. Unfortunately, when I recorded this, I left my streaming overlay from during testing going. So I'm sorry that it currently tells us that we're playing Oath of Druids. We are absolutely not. We are 100% playing Doomsday, as can be seen by the Thassa's Oracle and Street Wraith in my hand. So getting going, I am going to ship this hand. I don't think it's good enough. It just has like a couple of pieces of our action and a redraw, and that's about it. This is a much better hand. It's got a couple of ways to start filtering through cards. Ponder's just 10 times better than Street Wraith for actually getting the game plan going, and we still have a Force of Will, and we still have a Dark Ritual to take the place of fundamentally. It's performing the same role as the Lotus was in our previous hand. I also noted opponent sent us a message which I completely failed to notice during the course of this, so apologies to my opponent. Ponder's good. We see the misstep which we're going to draw for turn. It can be a pitch card for Force. It can pitch a... It can take an Ancestral. It can do a bunch of different things. It can hit a Reb. And we're going to draw a Vampiric Tutor for turn. We have an Underground Sea beneath that in case we feel that we need to draw the Underground Sea. Opponent leads on a Bayou, telling us that they're most likely on Bug Control. And Thoughtseize does not disabuse us of that notion. So we're going to misstep it. So the only deck that I know of in this in Vintage at the moment playing Thoughtseize is Bug Control, so we pretty much confirmed it. Same for Bayou, really, but... so we misstep the Thoughtseize, and opponent chooses to Force here. We will not Force back. We don't need to. It's not worth the cards. I think it's probably a little greedy on our opponent's side to force through the Thoughtseize, but also I don't know their hand. So I could be well and truly wrong on that. So they'll Thoughtseize and take our Force, which we're fine with. What this does mean is that depending on what the peak sees and draws us, we're going to change our Vamp choice based on that, I think. And so opponent casts a Time Walk, which gets them one closer to drawing a Leovold. Now, as a nice aside here, we can use Vampiric Tutor and Peak to kind of work as a build your own Force of Will here. We'd have to get Daze, or we'd have to get Daze to do that, but it would let us fundamentally, build our own Force. So we'll go ahead and fetch to get rid of the Underground Sea. I don't think we really want to be drawing that. We kind of want gas at this point. Ideally Doomsday off the peak. An opponent's choosing to fight over this, which isn't what I personally would do. But once again, I don't know what's in the hand. Anyway, we'll go ahead and we'll Vamp and we'll grab the Ancestral. Oh, an opponent forces. Okay. So now we're both on... Well, we're both down to fundamentally 0 cards. I guess the Ritual does have an application, then at least we can draw a Doomsday. Now, Mystic Sanctuary was not our best draw. We're in trouble if opponent finds a Leovold or a Goyf, though. Gosh, is a nice pickup here. And that's tapping wrong. We actually want to pick up the Mystic Sanctuary. Because it will let us redeploy our Gush and play a long game if necessary. We're cycling Street Wraith straight away because we actually want to draw something relevant. We kind of really want to start casting some spells here because that's kind of been what we've run out of this game. We just haven't managed to get our card draw going after the Ponder. And I guess the Gush, I shouldn't whinge too much. The Gush was a very nice draw in that position. And okay, so I'm just jamming here. I think this is fine. We can always wait until next turn and then just Doomsday back or Gush back if we need to. We can rebuild fairly easily and definitely considerably more easily than our opponent. Flusterstorm's fine. So opponent's back down to one card in hand, and we're going to start gushing again soon. So as long as opponent doesn't actually have a clock on the board, we can kind of take a little bit of time. We are playing in a format where, look, yes, you can die quickly, but fundamentally, from a position like this game is turning into a little bit of a stall. And opponent's not doing anything to draw cards, and we more or less are at this point. Okay, so Misty was not ideal, but that's fine. We'll wait till next turn. We'll gush. And we'll do it again until either opponent does something to start clocking us, or we draw something that lets us progress our game. It may have been correct to just take the Doomsday, but we can have some fun with this, to be honest. We entered in this event to have fun, and so we might as well maximise that. I guess also, like, the Gush does have the other upside of meaning that we're more likely to be able to resolve our Doomsday with a counterspell backup. Okay, so they've finally got a clock down. This is what they've been missing the entire game. They've managed to be quite disruptive, but they've just never managed to clock us. And this is now becoming relevant. And so I'm holding a black here. And the reason to hold a black off the Underground Sea is to float a black off the Underground Sea is in case we find our Doomsday. And so we get to see a lot of cards this turn, and surprise, surprise, we hit our Doomsday. So I think it was probably incorrect of me to put back the Underground Sea there. I think we should have kept that. And just put back our other fetch, perhaps. And we're going to have to pass the turn with this pile, but opponent has one card in hand. And one draw step to change something pretty significant, and they have to be able to do it through force of will. And so we're going to build our pile so that we are going to... So I think I punt here and build my pile wrong, to be honest. So the pile should be Oracle, Oracle, Lotus, Gush, Ancestral, with Ancestral being the top card. Because what that lets us do is it lets us Ancestral. Okay, I guess it's fine to put Oracle above Lotus, because we might need to draw that. But yeah, the Ancestral's meant to be on top of the Gush, so that if they counter the Ancestral, we have another turn to then Gush, and then they need to basically cast like 2 draw spells back to back to back. So our main problem here is we need to race the Deathrite Shaman, and I think... So we go to 4 this turn, they counter Ancestral, we go to 2, Force of Will puts us on 1, so we beat the Ancestral as long as one of our draw spells resolves. We don't care about an Oko. And we don't care about the Deathrite Shaman activation. Unfortunately, we had the foresight to put the Oracle on top of the Lotus. This is important here because it's going to mean that when we draw our 2 cards, one of which is Ancestral Recall, we are still able to cast our Oracle. So we're just building up Storm Count now, and despite building our pile wrong, we're still going to win. So we're not going to board in a lot for this. We're going to board in a Karakas and a Flusterstorm. So we're boarding fairly minimally, as most of our deck is actually pretty reasonable for this matchup. We kind of like having a couple of basics for Assassin's Trophies. We have a bunch of counter spells which we're going to want. The rest of it's all kind of core combo. We'll cut the Vamp Shooter as it's not amazing in blue matchups. We'll cut a Street Wraith as it's kind of our weakest card here. We're going to keep the Chain of Vapor, for instance, as it's another way to remove Leovold. We're going to keep Demonic Consultation and Necro because they're just other ways to get a combo going. So we're pretty intent on where we're at. We're going to snap this hand off. If we get Thought Seized on turn 1 again, we're going to lose our Doomsday. But that's okay, we still have a Time Walk. This isn't amazing from here, but it'll at least let us kind of dig a little bit deeper in a pinch. And we've got a couple of Dark Rituals. So what this hand did is it basically let us go off turn 1 and not have to do a pass the turn pile because of the Time Walk and the multiple rituals. So it's kind of sad to see the Time Walk go, but that it is what it is. I'm going to pass the turn here just because at this point I'm a little bit suspicious about the fact that he hasn't that he didn't take the Doomsday. And so fortunately we draw a Preordain and we're just going to look for a counter spell now. Or a way to see opponent's hand. Dig Through Time's also good here. So Dig Through Time... So we can actually use a Dark Ritual here to accelerate our Dig Through Time. The way we do that is Dark Ritual will not only chuck another card in the graveyard, but it'll also give us a bunch of mana to get the dig off a bit faster. It's not the best use of a Dark Ritual. It kind of means that like dig isn't actually giving us any card advantage. It's card neutral, but we get to see we have 7 chances to find a counter spell, basically. An opponent's going to Assassin's Trophy us. And it might have been correct to actually dig there when we had an extra mana. Because we're only 1 mana off, actually. We were only 1 mana off actually casting the dig, but I can understand why I made this play. I think we want to do it in opponent's end step to try and tap him out. Or pull a force out of him or something. Okay, and I remember here, so opponent cast Necro. So Necro here kind of gives me a little bit of an indicator that opponent is probably playing a non-standard build and maybe is likely a little bit newer to the format in that case as well. So I'm happy to... It's awesome to see some new players or some different players come in and jump in for Eternal Weekend. Some of the people that we don't always necessarily see playing in the leagues. But it also means that, you know, a couple of strange things that we'd consider atypical are going to crop up, like Necro here. But anyway, we're going to dig in response and hope to draw a Force of Will, and opponent has the Flusterstorm. So that's fine. Now, normally I would actually, despite the fact that I think Necro is probably not... The reason Necro is not normally played in bug decks is because it's harder to abuse there. Combo decks such as the one that I'm playing use Necro to draw to 7 cards and then probably draw an extra 1 to 2 to 3, depending. And then they just do that maybe twice, and it lets them sculpt really well, go off with a full grip, with protection, and whatever they think they want their ideal 7 to be. Fair bug decks don't get to do that. They're just using it to draw to hand size, which will probably like eventually be fine. But here's where opponent demonstrates perhaps that they're not super familiar with Necro again, and they only activate it twice. Two Necro activations is not amazing. And so we're just going to cast our Doomsday Heroes. If they start Necroing more aggressively, we're almost certainly going to lose. And here I choose to make like a really resilient pile. With a lot of counter magic in it. Because I feel like if opponent decides to actually start activating Necro, then the way we win this is by basically just beating their 7-card hand. And the easiest way I can think of to do that is with multiple Flusterstorms. And normally I'm kind of inclined to put Oracle maybe somewhere a little higher in the pile, but here I think we want kind of all of our cards. So opponent's got a Lotus. And it looks like they're casting their own Delve spell here. And I think maybe they should have left more blue mana open, just because, look, the reason to leave more blue mana open there is if you draw like a Narset or something like that, or you find a Narset, or your Leovold, you could shut me off the Ancestral that you're probably pretty sure is in my pile. And opponents decided not to Necro this time. And not to counter our Ancestral, even if they have a counter spell there. So we're going to pass the turn. And next turn we're just going to draw our Oracle. Opponent finally gets a clock on. Much like last game, I think this clock has just come far too late, but that's okay. At least the clock is down now. I guess we have a natural clock anyway, and that we only have one card left to draw in our library, so clock's kind of less exciting there for them. And they're going to go up to a 5-card hand, so it's their 5-card hand versus my 5-card hand. And they're going to need triple counterspell to win this. So we lead on Demonic Consultation. Yeah, Lotus seems fine. They probably don't want to force the Lotus. Forcing the Lotus won't do a lot. It's burning a counterspell when we can still cast an Oracle. Consultation to build Storm to make sure that our Flusterstorm's alive. And we'll put our Oracle on the stack. And we'll find out what opponent's got on the other side there. So he's got a Mindbreak Trap. So Trap's fine. With what we were doing, we were going to make sure that our Flusterstorm was live. We were going to run into Trap anyway. So not a lot we could have done about keeping the Trap there. Oh, sorry, playing around the Trap there. And here, I'm not sure what opponent is doing. I'm not sure if they're trying to bait me into paying for Spell Pierce to make Daze a possibly active card, or if they just don't entirely understand the interaction between Spell Pierce and the Flusterstorm trigger. So one way or another, they work that out, and And we then go on to Flusterstorm their Force of Will. And I think we'll also put some number on the Mindbreak Trap as well, because we can. It's not strictly necessary here, but a couple of copies on Mindbreak Trap don't hurt. And when opponent taps his bio there, I remember being quite nervous that he has a Veil. A Veil would just absolutely ruin us here. But he was just considering tapping for one of the copies of Flusterstorm. And look, the only thing that wins here is a second Mindbreak Trap, and I'm pretty sure he would have already cast that. So the Oracle's going to resolve. And that's going to be the end of the match.